At the edge of life, where ordinary moments plunge you into nature's most brutal tests, on these ice-capped peaks, where even a single step can open into eternity, prepare to witness the true story of two climbers that will be etched into your heart. February 25th, 2021, morning. Amidst the ice-capped, rugged peaks of Montana, with the sun still hidden behind the mountains, a biting wind whipped their faces. Every breath was icy. Two experienced climbers, 34-year-old Ethan and 30-year-old Kyle, set out for a challenging ascent towards the Glacierpoint mountain range. Ethan was a climber known for his technical knowledge and experience, having spent years in the world's most demanding terrains. For him, every step was a calculation, every decision the result of years of accumulated wisdom. Kyle, on the other hand, had summited many peaks with Ethan, and was not just a climbing partner, but also his unwavering source of trust. With his unshakable stamina and boundless courage, he was Ethan's greatest assurance on this perilous journey. This time, their target was Glacierpoint's north face, a route even local guides dared not approach in winter. This route, with its frozen waterfalls, icicles stretching for meters, and menacing weather conditions, was truly a death trap. Yet it was also a legendary challenge, commanding respect within the climbing community. At 06:30 a.m., as the sun slowly illuminated the sharp mountain peaks, the duo began their climb. The air was freezing. The temperature was around -18 degrees Celsius. Every breath filled their lungs with a knife-like cold. Despite high snow levels, the night's frost had hardened the ground. This allowed their crampons to grip the ice better, making progress easier.
Ethan led the way. With the lead rope in hand, he meticulously scanned the route, calculating every step. Kyle followed, carefully controlling the safety rope from behind. Their climb resembled a synchronized dance. Ropes were perfectly secured. Ice screws were regularly driven into the rock, creating safety points. GPS devices were constantly checked, progress recorded inch by inch. Every detail was part of a meticulously pre-planned strategy. The silence and grandeur of the mountain provided a backdrop to the determined strides of these two men. At 11:45 a.m., deep within the north face, they reached a massive ice formation called the Crystal Tongue. Named for its shape, this structure resembled a frozen waterfall with gigantic icicles hanging from the sky.
Beyond this point, it was truly a different world. The route had become almost vertical. The Crystal Tongue presented serious technical difficulties, even for the most experienced climbers. Ethan had studied this section beforehand with satellite images and detailed maps. But standing before that menacing mass of ice now was so unsettling, it was as if all theoretical knowledge had suddenly become useless. The ice's shining and smooth surface was deceptive. Every icicle was like a potential death trap hanging in the air. Seeing the view, Kyle paused for a moment. He thought to himself, "This is too steep." Then he asked aloud, "What do you say? Should we try a traverse?"
Ethan was resolute.
He had no intention of straying from the route. "There's an exit at the end of this line. It's worth the risk," he said. "The ground looks solid. We just need to be very careful." This brief dialogue clearly showed their different perspectives, but shared commitment to the common goal. They took a short break. They ate their energy gels, drank the last of their water from their flasks. Then they checked their equipment one last time. The sharp tips of their ice axes seemed impatient for new anchor points. Ethan again took the lead. Every move was calculated. Kyle, meanwhile, followed, constantly monitoring the safety rope. The continuing cold meant the ice was still solid. However, occasional gusts of wind caused small pieces of ice to break off and fall from above, adding extra tension to the climb. It was as if the mountain was seeking its own balance, always preparing a surprise. During this vertical ascent, which lasted about half an hour, Ethan was forced to stop at one point. A massive icicle blocked his path. The only option was to carefully pass by this gigantic piece of ice. Ethan gathered all his focus, leaned to the side, and prepared to overcome the obstacle. At that critical moment,
as Ethan plunged his ice axe into what he thought was a solid point. A sharp crack sound echoed from deep within. This sound was not just a fracture, but the beginning of an irreversible process. Ethan tried to pull back, but it was too late. It was like a twist of fate. A colossal icicle broke off from above, tumbling down with a horrific roar that deafened the ears. With great force, it struck the ice platform where Ethan stood. The platform shattered. Ethan lost his balance, plummeting downwards before the rope had a chance to fully tension. Those few seconds seemed to stretch into eternity. Kyle tried to comprehend what had happened, and an instinctive scream tore from his throat. In a panic, he cried out Ethan's name, echoing across the entire mountain. But the sound vanished into the icy void, and then a deadly silence fell. The mountain seemed to swallow all sound.
Kyle quickly secured his rope, making himself safe. Then, in fear, he began calling down, repeatedly shouting Ethan's name. But no sound came from below. The tension in the rope had lessened. This indicated either that Ethan was no longer attached to the rope or that he had lost consciousness. Both possibilities caused a bone-chilling fear to rise within Kyle. With trembling hands, he checked the rope and began his descent. After descending about 10 meters, he found Ethan motionless at the edge of an ice-covered platform. His helmet was cracked and his face was covered in blood. Kyle immediately knelt beside him and checked his pulse. It was weak, but a hopeful beat. In a great rush, he grabbed his radio and called for emergency assistance.
He relayed their GPS coordinates, his voice trembling from cold and fear. But their location was one of the most difficult to reach, known only to climbers. It would take at least 4 to 5 hours for rescue teams to arrive. For a freezing body, this meant an eternity. Kyle sat beside Ethan. He couldn't even feel his own numbness. With his trembling hands, he held Ethan's cold hands, leaning close to his face and speaking as if whispering. His desperation was evident in his voice. He told him to hold on. He reminded him of every difficulty they had faced, every summit they had reached. "We can do it again," he whispered, pleading with him not to close his eyes. Time was cruelly slipping away. The cold, the impact he had sustained, and the race against time were weakening Ethan with every passing minute. Kyle tracked his breathing as if counting every single breath. His pulse slowed down until it stopped completely with a final beat. Ethan was no longer breathing. Kyle did not release his hands, as if he would never let go again. But he couldn't hold back his tears either. Rescue teams had not yet arrived, and Ethan, at that moment, lost his life in the mountain's icy, merciless embrace. Hours later, the teams reached the area and safely brought Kyle up. Ethan's body, however, could only be recovered by helicopter the following day. Investigations revealed that the weather conditions that day had made the icicles extremely fragile, and the fatal cracks were too fine to be distinguished with the naked eye. This was a concrete illustration of how unpredictable and unforgiving nature can be. Ethan's death was not just the loss of one person. It was also a profound and cautionary shock for the climbing community. Kyle did not give up climbing, but with every ascent, he became more planned, more careful, and more humble towards nature. Years later, in an interview, he described this tragic event with these words: "Sometimes technical knowledge or experience alone is not enough. Nature is unpredictable. Even the most precise calculations can be undone by an unseen crack. If you confuse courage with arrogance, you pay for it with your life. On the mountain, you must always leave something to nature. You cannot control everything. That was my biggest lesson." This story, inspired by real events, stands as a near-true account, an instructive warning that once again reminds us of human fragility in the face of nature's power. If you are interested in more breathtaking survival stories like this, don't forget to subscribe to the channel for more in the series. We await your thoughts in the comments.